All right. Well, hello. Um, is it afternoon? It's morning. Good morning. I'm discombobulated. Yes, I continue to cough. So I apologize for that. Okay, so this is just like a real fast live, just a commentary actually on the whole goings on. Hey, Big Ups, how are you doing? Can you hear me? Am I heard? I didn't check my microphone to see if it was working. Good morning, Daisy. Hi, Jessica. Can y'all hear me? Hey, Texas Lassie. How are you? Can y'all hear me? I have no idea if y'all are able to hear me or not. Let me check mine. Testing. You can hear me. All right. So here we go. All right. Hey, Daisy Sunshine. Good. Very nice. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into this. So, yesterday, of course, all the world was just in a meltdown over this whole Kohberger cameras in the courtroom issue, correct? And I'm looking for my. Sorry, I'm looking for my document. Okay, so yesterday. I'm so sorry. All right, so yesterday the whole world was in meltdown over this whole Kohberger cameras in the courtroom. How are they going to do? Now, the defense, well, they're not playing around on this. Rather than simply having the the news consortium go in and request, hey, we would like to have cameras in the courtroom. Brian Kohberger's defense has come out and said, oh no, we are not going to do this. We don't want them under any circumstances in any way. And they actually, this time we got, why is it not getting bigger? This time we actually got evidence in that Brian Kohberger's attorney hired a social psychologist to present evidence on how the general public can be influenced by media, and what are the tricks and the tools that are used by, let's say, advertising, but now social media for sure, because many of us are making money on social media. And so we do try to manipulate the viewers. We want to bring them back to us. We want them to come to our channel and watch and listen. And so there are quite a bit of things that people can do to try to increase the number of views and the number of subscribers that are coming to their content, which is absolutely 100% about cash. They're not doing it because they like you. I promise. So, clickbait is something that used to make people really mad. And if somebody put up a title like, oh my God, shocking, Kohberger killed his little sister when he was 3, you would click on that and you'd be like, oh my God, we got to read about this. It's crazy. And then if you did that, and then the article was nothing about such absurd commentary, then you wouldn't go back. You would kind of put them on the block list and go, I don't want to go listen to those unscrupulous creators. That's BS. Nothing like that happened. They just tried to get me to click. I don't want to be manipulated and be a pawn in their game to try to increase their bank account. So color me gone. Well, we're not seeing that in the Kohberger thing. I got to tread lightly here. I am, after all, the creator of Wild Speculation Friday. Okay. I've got that crown. So I don't mind. I don't mind wild speculation. Let's name it wild speculation, right? I don't mind developing theories. Let's name it a theory. Let's not build up a group of like-minded creators whose goal it is to simply get views. And so they work together to create a line of fiction. That's disingenuous. It's dishonest. And the court is watching us. We, the true crime community, we found our way into the court documents. Now, I had this happen to me before in another case, and I was mortified. But in this situation, it's a little bit different because and here's where the court is getting it wrong, in my opinion. But they did, this is the important part, they did hire a social psychologist to investigate, to pull studies, empirical studies, peer-reviewed publications, to find out, to make an expert, knowledgeable statement of opinion on really and truly, is it possible that the defendant is going to be negatively impacted by the public engagement with this case? Or can we expect that he will be able to get a fair trial no matter, what? And this social psychologist came back with receipts, and she came back really, her report is really good. And she is definitive. There's no wishy-washiness to it. She is definitive in saying it is unlikely, given the amount of engagement currently, the tone and quality of the coverage on social media, it is unlikely that you can find an unaffected jury pool. Right there, right off the bat. And if you do find an unaffected jury pool, how will all of these crazy social media stories, how will they affect his defense and his ability to get a fair trial? This case is, I said it early on, I kept saying, this is uncomfortable. This feels like it's going the way of Chris Watts. We've had plenty of big stories. Letitia Stalk was a huge, huge case. Lori Vallow, huge case. And people were able, I'm talking about social media creators, people were able to cover the story. Yes, there was a little bit of speculation and whatnot, but for the most part, they were able to cover the story with facts and without all the sensationalism that we saw in the Chris Watts case. Well, with Kohberger, we're right back to where we were with Watts. It's bad. I was actually I went down the rabbit hole the other day with Brent Kopecky. There is a group of people, I'm talking about YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. There's a group of people following the Kohberger case, but they're making the case that Brent Kopecky was actually the one that did it. Well, Kopecky was just a guy with PTSD, haunted, severe mental health issues, and he acted out, and that's the rest of the story. They've also drawn these connections that Xana is a drug dealer or was a drug dealer, that Xana is dealing drugs, and that Maddie, listen, this is just so hard to wrap my head around. Maddie flushed drugs down the toilet. Now, there is nothing that would lead one to that. I mean, even on Wild Speculation Friday, at least we use facts to sort of drive us towards some of our speculation, correct? Show me some evidence where Maddie's flushing anything down the toilet. Anything. It is, when you hear these stories, you really have to get concerned. What if you get targeted? What if you get targeted by a group similar to what's happening with the Kohberger case, and they make the decision to frame you as doing something illegal and nefarious, and they begin to offer up, evidence that is actually just contrived. It's just one person saying something, the other person repeating it, and then the third person saying, "Oh, I heard," So the social psychologist that they hired, she did a good job. She went through background. Dr. G, who is in fact an expert, okay, he's not a self-prescribed expert, although that's the way he is described in the document. They say self-prescribed experts are blah 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 blah, but Dr. G is a forensic psychologist. He is not self-prescribed. He is in fact a licensed clinical psychologist who does forensic evaluations. He is accustomed to working with the criminal element, evaluating them and such. And so, yeah, they took some dramatic liberties, I think, in their report. But nevertheless, it is very clear they are watching us. Even Jennifer Coffindaffer, the FBI, ex-FBI agent, she got brought into the mix, talking about how many views that she gets and the breadth of coverage. If she makes a statement, how far does that statement travel? How many people are affected by simply what is her opinion? And because she's expert, and the social psychologist goes on and talks about the influence that experts typically have just by way of being the expert, right? That they almost get like instant credibility. So there were many of our people that got implicated in this thing. I'm sure it's fairly uncomfortable. And again, I'm going to say this again. I think Dr. G has done a really good job. I like to watch his videos. I don't think he's irresponsible. I don't think he's, but that was one of those that they talked about, was how, a self-prescribed expert evaluated the hearing and made notice of every little move that Kohberger made, and when he closed his eyes and what that meant, licking his lips, what that meant. None of that has anything to do with an attorney. So why are they talking about that? That commentary was not irresponsible, and it was also not empirically disingenuous. There are studies that show that, yes, people that get nervous, that they will lick their lips. Your mouth gets a bit dry when you get nervous, and that is a sign, right? So it's gotten weird. It's just gotten so weird. This was, in fact, my fear of how this would unfold when all the crazy stories started, beginning with Kim WSU. And I did make some videos, and I did show receipts that I think there is a lot of reason not to completely buy into what Kim is saying. I think that Kim was also involved in the Kylie Rodney issues. And perhaps this is one of her ways to get some significance, right? But nevertheless, it's dramatically grown from there. It's not just simply, oh, the kids were all talking about it. That is the foundation of this Kohberger Crama coverage. They're all saying, like it's carved in stone, they're blaming everyone from Bethany, Dylan, Dylan's boyfriend, the guy that never even lived in the, or the girl that never even lived in the house, the guy that owns the house, the neighbor across the walkway, fraternity boys, Xana's mother, people in Coeur d'Alene, the police. Yes, the police are in on it. So that's just right off the top of my head, right? Just right off the top of my head. So, this social psychologist looked into all this and she discovered all these crazy stories. And these are stories that everybody's enjoying. They're having fun. They like the discussion, right? But when you're an officer of the court, when your job is to take an accused and try to kill him, there are rules, that, constitutional protections. He gets the benefit of the doubt, whether we like Kohberger or not. Legally, not social media wise, legally he gets the benefit of the doubt because they are going to go for the death penalty. I'm certain of that. So basically, let me just read you a couple of comments from the court documents. Mr. Kohberger's charge and subsequent courtroom proceedings have captured the attention of local and national news organizations as well as social media platforms. And it was the social media coverage later on in this report that really makes things look bad for us. We look bad. We do. The court had previously permitted cameras in the courtroom in regards to prior proceedings. However, given the sensationalized nature of the case, the audiovisual coverage has become material for news outlets and social media accounts to espouse their unfounded opinions. And that is where we start to go off the rails. It is those unfounded opinions of experts or journalists that are directly going to interfere with Kohberger getting a fair trial, according to the social psychologist. Following each of Kohberger's court appearances, social media posts have been made regarding whether it's through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, a mini podcast. Each video attempts to analyze Kohberger's demeanor, his body language from one court appearance to the other. They are seen describing him as having cold iciness. Quotation marks. It looks like he is just filled with darkness and hate. He just keeps getting creepier and creepier. So the argument by the defense is that, you know, the media does have a really critical and important role in informing the public. The right only exists to the extent that it does not impede upon the rights of the defendant, and it is subject to maintaining fairness in the judicial process. A fundamental right of every defendant is the right to a fair trial by an impartial jury, and this was established by the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And I agree, I absolutely agree with all of that. But at this point, because Kohberger's story, the Idaho 4, because the story has taken on like this cult following, and it's almost become like fan fiction, where as it goes through each day or each iteration after each proceeding, people are modifying the wild speculation. It's getting wilder and wilder. I mean, at this point, I'm waiting for the aliens to land in Moscow. It's coming. So, they give some citations, some precedent from previous cases. Given the pervasiveness of modern communications and the difficulty of effacing prejudicial publicity from the minds of the jurors, the trial courts must take strong measures to ensure that the balance is never weighed against the accused. That was a decision from 1966. The court has duty to preserve a defendant's right to a fair trial and must limit media exposure when it is apparent that the accused might otherwise be prejudiced or disadvantaged. To preserve a defendant's right, the court must balance the rights of the defendant and the interests of the media. In doing so, the court ought to recognize that a First Amendment right should not impinge upon the most fundamental of all freedoms, which is the right to the fair trial. I'm going to disagree a little bit. The most fundamental of all freedoms, is it really right to fair trial or freedom of speech? That's kind of a controversial statement, but I get what they're saying, and this is for a court case, so it's, that is important. The court should not permit the media to use cameras to permit unfairly prejudicial coverage of Mr. Kohberger or harassing courtroom participants. First of all, nobody's harassing courtroom participants. That is sensational. The very people that are trying to stop people from being sensational about Kohberger are now engaging in sensationalism themselves. No one has harassed courtroom participants. We went through Eric Floyd's trial of Derek Chauvin. It was carried out in a dignified, respectful manner. There were no shenanigans. Same thing with Lori Vallow. Nobody was attacked or accosted. There was no circus outside of the courthouse. It was all done in a dignified manner. And there was a lot of conversation about Lori Vallow, but here's the difference. It didn't get weird with Lori Vallow like it has with Chris Watts and now with Kohberger. It's gotten weird. They're making up things just out of thin air. Just looking at parallels and then trying to attribute meaning to those parallels. It's a bit schizophrenic in nature. So it's uncomfortable. And I know why it's being done. I'm not a goody two shoes. I'm not trying to be holier than thou or anything. I get it. People want successful YouTube channels. People want to be able to make a living on social media. I know that. I understand it. But now you've actually shot yourself in the foot by sensationalizing and doing these fictional accounts, which is very attractive to the listener, the subscriber, and they have fun. They like it. They join together. They have these meaningful conversations that feel good. But in reality, the person with the final word is the judge. And the judge is going to look at this. Oh, I've got a victim here who they're saying is dealing drugs. I got another victim here who's flushing drugs down in the middle of the night. And what am I going to do? Nobody in this whole mix, nobody says anything about, but wait a minute. For these to be drug dealing, out of control, crazed kids, how exactly is it that they're able to make 4.0 grades and they're graduating? How? I've never seen drug addicts that have been able to navigate successfully the college experience to the point of 4.0 and graduation. The evidence that these kids were involved in criminal enterprise is not there. No matter how desperately you want that to be, it does make for a very interesting line of discussion to consider. Were other people involved? I get that. This whole Brent Kopecky thing is very interesting. He is military, or he was military, PTSD, perhaps, so I get that. But to say that these girls were dealing in drugs, with it, there's just we're right back at Shanann Ruchek. Shanann Ruchek got murdered. Her 2 little babies got killed and shoved down into oil tanks because she had Munchausen by proxy. No, she just didn't. So they were murdered because she married a guy who is a primary psychopath who was overwhelmed by the financial demands and wanted a reset. And so he found a girl who was willing to give him another role to play. That's all. It wasn't this weird, but anyway, I digress. So let me go on now. They begin to offer receipts in their argument. They say, in the present case, Mr. Kohberger's actions are heavily scrutinized by self-proclaimed experts, utilizing audiovisual footage from courtroom proceedings to make assumptions regarding his body language and character, which scrutinizes prior court's concerns regarding the presence of cameras in the courtroom. Only in Idaho. For instance, a YouTube video called Dr. G is the Bomb. No, it's not what it's called, but I'm not going to, purports to dissect every gesture, every shift in posture, every flicker of emotion that crossed Kohberger's face during this tense courtroom scene while utilizing only one courtroom video. So you want him to do like a dissertation? Then you're really going to be unhappy. And he's not self-prescribed. He is, in fact, an expert. All right. So this, this was one of the things that I feared with the Kohberger case. When things got weird, the cops are in on it, when all that went down, I thought, I don't want to do this. So I've sort of steered away from the Kohberger case unless there was something, specific. Now we've got this coming out where you've got a defense attorney who has hired an expert, a social psychologist, to do an investigation and has now submitted a report that in no uncertain terms is informing the judge, another expert, this is not, with the current climate on social media and in regular media, you will have a very difficult time finding appropriate jury pool. What do you think is going to happen? The judge is going to say not no, but hell no. And I fear that, in the Lori Vallow case, we got the audio at the end of the day. I thought it worked very well. I thought it was a great solution. In this situation, after they hire a social psychologist to come in and do that, I don't even think we're going to get that. I think the only way that anybody's going to be able to know what's going on in that courtroom is if they go get a seat or if they allow overflow seating in another area. I will say this, you have there's 5 families involved. They're spread out all over the country. You have countless numbers of friends, loved ones of these 4 victims. And so the judge is going to have to really balance that as well. So on the one hand, he's going to have the report from the social psychologist saying this is a really toxic environment, and I don't know how you're going to be able to do this without it being a violation of his rights. And then you're going to have to compare that, or the judge will have to manage that against, but we got 5 families spread all over the country, literally hundreds of friends and loved ones who are interested. How do we do this? How do we manage this? So I think on the one hand, this is, kind of a cautionary tale for the future. These cases that bubble up that we're all very interested in, to have some restraint, to be a little, less manipulative, right? Take the facts, formulate your theories and ideas, but don't just start inventing information that isn't there. They're going to, I think eventually they're going to get to a point that they're going to start taking cameras out of the courtroom if we don't get a little bit more restrained in our excitement in making our content. It's my fear. So anybody that lives near to Idaho, let me know if you're going to go to the trial, because I think it's going to be the only way we're going to know what's going on is by the people that are actually in the courtroom. All right, that is it for me. Well, I'm irritated with my glasses because they're so reflective. Look at that. So I actually have a doctor's appointment, an eye doctor appointment tomorrow, and I'm getting the same glasses, but they got to do something about the front because I don't like all this light reflection. You know what I mean? I kind of want to know how they're going to get a jury. Everyone knows about this case. How are they going to find 15 people? That's why they hired this social psychologist. And now let me kind of quiet some of the irritation perhaps. Johnny Depp is literally the most recognized living person that's alive today, the most recognized face on the planet. And in terms of all historical figures, like throughout history, he is the number 5 most recognized face on the planet. So they did seat a jury for him, right? So it can be done. I don't think the standard is we need to seat a jury 15 people that have not heard of this case. I don't think that's the standard. I think it comes to the standard of, yes, you've heard of it. How much? Are you active on YouTube and Instagram? Do you believe Xana's a drug addict? They're going to have to find a group that perhaps maybe they heard it, but they don't know many details about it. Maybe they work a lot. Maybe they're people that, they're working 30, 40, 50 hours a week. And so they don't typically follow, social media, court cases and such. So there's, that I think they can. I just think that when the defense brought in the social psychologist to conduct their study, that's a game changer. Y'all mark my words. This is a game changer. It could become the norm, because now you've got it's not just arguments. Now you've got somebody that's come in and actually brought statistical analysis, controlled inquiry, and that carries an awful lot of power. So it's sad because we do enjoy watching the trials and discussing them. But again, I'm going to say it again. People did not get weird with Letitia Stout, did they? The people that were following the Letitia Stout case, we listened, we watched. They had cameras in the courtroom. And then we discussed what was being discussed on the stand. Nobody went crazy and came up with these bizarro upside down, ideas. That was a good example where everything went great. Derek Chauvin's trial, everything went great. People were responsible. Lori Vallow more recently was fine. So I don't know. Initially, all of this being set aside in terms of the psychologists that they hired, I said before, it is those cases where they limit the media where you get all this grand speculation. that in the cases, I think, where we do get cameras and we do, our journalists are given access to these storylines, you don't get as much wild speculation because there's interesting information to discuss that's fact-based. But when they just shut everything down and there's nothing there, that does leave a vacuum, number one, for people to make up interesting, exciting stories. But more importantly, how is anybody going to come out and say, oh, you know that story you heard about how Xana's dealing drugs? That is hogwash. And the reason we know it's hogwash is because we have where, you know, the last year of her education, she's had an accumulative grade point average of 3.876. That right there would stop that wild speculation trying to make her a drug dealer. It would stop it in its tracks because you can counter it with fact. But if they're just going to shut down any type of real information, they're creating a vacuum, number one, for these types of things to grow. And then number two, if you've got a gag order, who's going to step up and say, hey, you know all that hogwash about the drug dealing? That's not true. It's not true. I'm an officer of the court, or I'm a police officer working the investigation, and there is absolutely nothing uncovered that would suggest in any way that Xana or anyone else in that house had ever made a dime by trafficking drugs. Never. But you can't do that in the current environment that has been engineered by the judge and the defense. So it is an interesting conversation to have. I don't take issue at all with anything that the social psychologist said in her report. Everything she said is based on good sociology and psychology theory. But I do think we kind of have to be very careful not to look at this in the vacuum of research, because you can't hold all things, you can't hold everything's standard. The reality is that people have interest in these cases and they're going to talk about it. So what do you want them to talk about? You want them to talk about facts, truth, or do you want them to just make crap up that nobody can take issue with? The public, the jury pool is hearing, here's my point, the jury pool is hearing the crazy stories about how the 4 kids were dealing drugs. Just because you take cameras out of the courtroom and you do a gag order on people, you're not stopping the crazy, wild speculation. So wouldn't it make more sense to turn the lights on, put out accurate factual information to counter the crazy speculation? All right. If you agree with me, put a 1. If you think I have rose-colored glasses, put a 2. All right. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon.